Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to do the super original idea of making a tier list of every single NPC. This tier list, it won't be based on my personal opinion of each NPC, because some NPCs I think are much better structured than others, but it will be objectively based on how good the NPC's rewards are, how long their questline is, and stuff like that. Basically how good an NPC feels to do and complete, and all that fun stuff. So we aren't going to be worrying about lore-based stuff or anything that actually matters in Ghost Simulator, due to the fact that I'm more of a grinder in Ghost Simulator and don't care too much about the lore aspects of it. This has been kindly provided on the tier maker website by Fishy or something like that, who has been keeping it roughly up to date. There are a few missing NPCs in here, but I can easily go and add those back, so that wasn't a huge deal. But yeah, we'll be going through every single NPC and ranking them from S to F tier. S tier being the best possible NPC, i.e. it gives great reward and the questline is super balanced in my opinion. Obviously all this is going to be my opinion, even though it's not based on my personal preference of these questlines. And then F tier being absolutely horrible rewards that take way too long or are way too easy to complete, that no one really ever should do. Now the idea of this tier list is both to give you guys an idea of which quest lines in Ghost Simulator are worth it to do, and then also go through all the NPCs so new players can kind of understand what each of them are before they get to them, and also for entertainment purposes, obviously. Without further ado, I think we'll go ahead and start in with making this tier list. Now the first NPC we have up is Ghost Hunter Gabe. He is the first NPC players get to in Ghost Simulator and serves as the introduction to the game. Beyond giving players instructions on how to vacuum ghosts, what ghosts give, and the basics of playing the game in general, it's not a very useful questline, only giving a few gems. And because of that, it's between A and B tier on him. I think personally he'd go in B tier, being more of a mid than actually good. Next up, we have Ghost Hunter Adam over here in the city, or Adam is the next one that I would recommend going to. And he actually gives a really good reward, allowing players to go ahead and equip a hoverboard to travel around a lot faster in Ghost Simulator. It's one of the core mechanics of Ghost Simulator, and to boot, his questline isn't actually all that difficult to complete, requiring only needing to get through the first 3 areas, not requiring any bosses or any extra ghosts, really, in addition to the ones you'd already need to vacuum anyways. And because of that, I think he is going to be the first S tier on our tier list pretty comfortably, since he does allow you to go ahead and get that hoverboard, which is pretty much core to how people play Ghost Simulator. Next up, we have Jessie over here in Wild West. She's again a pretty basic questline, similar to Adam in that she's just a progression questline. It's very similar structure. As the only problem with her is that she requires so many items and actually a boss in her questline that she actually ends up taking over an hour to do. Although her perk that she gives, the magnetism ability, is really good. But overall, I think I always get that one confused. He comes in as a solid A tier NPC. Next up, we have the last progression quest in Main Hub. And once we get these, we'll go ahead and grab all the non-progression quests, is Ghost Hunter Captain Finsley. Ghost Hunter Captain Finsley, again, like Jessie before him, is actually quite a long questline, actually taking over an hour and a half at best speed to do. Mainly this is due to the fact that you need quite a bit of items from all the ghosts, but also requires quite a bit of ghosts in completion of two bosses in his questline. It's not a hard quest, but it is a long quest to do, especially considering the fact that 2 additional streams isn't super useful once you rebirth. He's pretty much entirely skipped every time you rebirth, and I think he deserves to be in about B tier. Again, not the worst questline in the world. He does give a decent perk, but nowhere near the levels of the hoverboard or even the magnet ability. Next up, we are going to go over all the miscellaneous quests that we have in main hub. Starting off, we have Ghost Hunter Dylan, which is a pet who gives you the reward of a mythical pet for just completing all the unboxing in main hub. He's kind of an introduction to unboxing in Ghost Simulator, and is pretty bad since the stats of the pets haven't been changed since it was released. So it's currently much worse than pretty much any other pet you can get in the game. I think this questline, just due to how hard it is to do for new players and how useless it is for anyone who can actually complete it, I think this questline easily deserves to go into F tier. The next questline we have is going to be Ghost Hunter Yuwu, which is kind of a race questline where you just have to complete a few races to go ahead, a few hundred races to complete her questline. It's not a hard questline. Rewards aren't great. The structure of the questline is meant to be kind of a passive quest, so you just grab the questline and then you let it get done in the background. But overall, the structure of the quest is not too bad. Only taking probably 20-30 hours at most to do. Overall, though, the rewards of some crate keys and maybe some event bait isn't too great. There's a few hoverboards in there that do look somewhat cool. But overall, I think it is a C tier, all things considered. It is a longer quest line. It doesn't really give that great of a reward. Next up is Ghost Hunter Liz. This NPC is a pretty interesting NPC. She has 3 quests, and once you complete the 3 quests, she gives you a pretty good-looking pet. It's actually pretty bad since its vacuum stat is much higher than its cell stat, and usually all people care about is their cell stat. But I think it's safe to say that this questline is going to be pretty much an F tier since the pet that you get isn't good at all. It isn't the longest questline, but the fact it is so short is kind of weird. Actually, because it is so short, people aren't going to get stuck on it like they do on Dylan. I guess it can go into C tier. Next up, we have Ghost Hunter Gramps, which is in the junkyard and is actually a pretty interesting NPC. Similar to Yuwu, he is a passive quest, requiring you to do pretty much the same amount of bosses as Yuwu requires. His quest is a lot easier since bosses do spawn in main hub, Ghost World, and every other world pretty much in Ghost Simulator. Much easier to do, much more rewarding since you do get that ectoplasm and boss crate from each boss, whereas races you can end up getting nothing from them. All things considered, I think this deserves to be in the B tier. It's not the best questline in the game, but it's definitely better than Yuwu and Liz. Next up, we are going to head into the sewers, and we are actually going to go do an NPC I don't have on my tier list right at the moment, which is going to be Ghost Hunter Reed. But yeah, Ghost Hunter Reed, he gives you 25 board storage, I believe. I haven't done his questline, as you guys can see. He's kind of sitting there. He is a permanent NPC, so it's quite rewarding to do. His questline I haven't looked at, but I believe it's pretty easy, and board storage is always nice for new players. I personally would rank it as a B tier, but I think overall it is definitely an A tier for other players, since they can go ahead and get some free pet storage. If they don't have all the game passes, it's actually meaningful. Whereas if you do have all the game passes, it's a little less. Next up, we are going to be looking at Ghost Hunter Human. This is an infinite quest and gives you gems for completing each quest line. Each quest is pretty mediocre in difficulty. But if you guys didn't see this, where this one was placed, seeing from like a mile away, it's a solid F tier. The gems it gives is pretty much worthless. You're much better off spending your time progressing through the game or grinding bosses for gems than completing an infinite quest. Next up is an NPC we don't have in this tier list, and that is going to be Michaela up here. This is a very similar quest line to Reed in the fact that she gives you some pet storage instead of board storage, but a little bit more board storage to go ahead and store a few more pets in your inventory. Again, this is probably going to rank at mediocre rank, similar to where Reed ended up, since it is a decent questline, not super useful for endgame. Area 51, we have 2 NPCs. We have Ghost Hunter Hands, which gives you an introduction to Gum and Ghost Simulator, along with giving you a decent reward of a basic boss gum for completing his questline. Overall, It's not the worst questline in the world. It's pretty simple to do. I think it's definitely between B and C tier. I don't think it's quite bad enough to go into C tier. The next NPC we have is also in Area 51. It is Ghost Hunter Grand. Now this questline, very similar to Gramps and Yugu before it, except instead of requiring bosses and races, requires you to use gum. Her reward though, rather than just being a pet, the gum hotkey, which if you guys don't know, allows you to use a gum by pressing here or clicking T, which is a super overpowered thing in Ghost Simulator, allowing you to grind so much easier pretty much everything in the game. Since gum is super overpowered, using it quickly, this is definitely justified going into S tier organized a little bit better, but I mean, I could technically organize them myself, but I don't feel like doing that. Next up, we have Ghost Hunter Blaze. He is the second to last NPC that we are going to be covering in Main Hub. Ghost Hunter Blaze is a pretty questionable questline. It is pretty much entirely lore-based, and so the length of it is actually quite long. As you guys can see, I've actually completed his questline for some reason on this current rebirth. But in general, he's a pretty big waste of time and requires players to go ahead and unbox a godly, which can be quite a struggle if you just get to him in the volcano on your first playthrough. Overall, it's probably C tier. It's not quite bad enough to belong in F tier, but not really good enough to actually do. Now the last quest line that we have in Main Hub, unless I'm forgetting some, is going to be Ghost Hunter Luna. Now this quest line is very similar to Blaze. It is slightly bit different. I think it's a little bit easier in general. Pretty comfortable sitting in the C tier with Blaze. Not the worst quest line in the game, but not a super good reward either. And now that we're done with that, I think that is every single non-second arc questline in Main Hub, and so we'll go ahead and switch over to Ghost World. Now, Ghost World is home to some of the least balanced quests in Ghost Simulator. Now, starting out, we have Ghost Hunter Shelly, which is notoriously a long questline due to her requiring you to grab 50 rare ghosts in one of her quest lines. And honestly, the reward of an additional pet slot isn't actually super useful. It does multiply the stats that you can sell for by 20%, or as a whole, I think this quest line, controversial opinion here, doesn't belong in the F tier, but actually belongs in the C tier, similar to all the other ones. That's just because, like, it actually is somewhat useful to have an additional pet slot. Next up, we have Ghost Hunter Leo, one of the best in the game, honestly. The perk that he gives, the heavy armor, allows you to AFK bosses, which is one of the things that you end up spending a lot of time doing in Ghost Simulator. It's just super nice to have. On top of that, his questline isn't actually too long. Like, if you compare him and Shelly, it's about half the length. Overall, I think I think this questline easily deserves to be an A tier, maybe even S tier. I don't think it's quite S tier material. I think the questline's just a little too long. And next up, we have Ghost Hunter Yoko. Again, very similar to Leo, this questline is a pretty medium length quest, and the reward that you get from it is pretty decent, giving you the turbocharger, which allows you to hoverboard at a pretty significantly increased speed. Again, this questline you do need to do for rebirths, which is always a negative in people's opinions, since you have to do it every single time you rebirth. But overall, like, this questline, controversial opinion here. I know a lot of people expect this one to go straight into F tier because of how long you have to spend on it during each rebirth, or maybe even C tier. I think this questline doesn't actually belong that low. I think it's pretty good in B tier. Not quite as good as the heavy armor. I think it is actually pretty solid A tier. Now that I think about it, having a little bit increase in your hoverboard turbo, I don't know if I showed that, but Yoko went into A tier, and Leo also went into A tier. Next up, we have one of my favorite questlines in the game, is Ghost Hunter Fern. For her questline, she goes ahead and gives you a pretty mediocre board, but the big thing that she does give is actually a total of 33 crate keys during her entire questline, 25 crate keys right at the last quest, and because of that, she's actually, I think, pretty much S tier, in my opinion, of Ghost Simulators. Giving 33 crate keys and allowing people to do her every single rebirth is just super neat. Next up, we have the pretty much the king of Ghost World is Gatekeeper. This questline is a really short questline. And the fact that unlocks both the ability to go do the Great Guardian, which is the first mega boss in Ghost Simulator, which is one of the key things that makes Ghost Simulator is the fact it has mega bosses. You'll see every event people are clamoring to fight a new mega boss. Overall, he's a very short questline. His reward is decently good. I think it's fair enough to go put him straight into A tier. First up, we are going to go over Jilin, which is this world's equivalent of Dylan, which if you're expecting anything other than to go straight into F tier, you're actually correct. Nah, it goes straight into F tier, guys. You need it. This questline requires you to level up many pets, and if you guys don't know anything, let me tell you now, leveling up specific pets is one of the worst questline structures in Ghost Simulator. Anyways, next quest that we have is Joven, which is the first questline structure. Very similar to Reed, where it does give you some pet story, but unlike Reed, it actually is similarly structured to the Dylan's, where it does require you to unbox all of the search and crate, but since this questline only needs to get done once and then it's permanent, I think it's safe to say that this questline probably belongs, I think it's safe to say that this one belongs in A tier. Next up we have is Ghost Hunter Ace. This questline, NPC itself is one of the NPCs that people don't like in Ghost Simulator just because of his personality and stuff like that. The fact that he is kind of a traitor, but since it does give you 3 for such a short quest, or 4 free crate keys, because it does require you to use one and it gives you 5, I think it goes into B tier. Like, it's not a super useful, 4 crate keys isn't super useful. I have Ghost Hunter Victor, which is the infinite questline in Ghost World, and if you were expecting anything else than it to go into F tier, well, you are wrong. It is going straight into F tier. And then the last questline that we do have in Ghost Simulator at this, or Ghost World at this point, is Ghost Hunter Jax, which is a very interesting NPC herself. She's one of the more neutral characters in the story of Ghost Simulator, and her questline though is a super long questline. Is, as you guys can see, I went way out of the way to go get her quest. She's out of the way. She's a long questline. She doesn't give anything useful other than maybe her pet or board, but those aren't good stat-wise. It's a very similar story to Blaze and Luna, where just too long and too much of a lore questline to go anywhere other than C tier. Like, even this questline could end up going into F tier. Actually, I think I'm going to do it. I think her questline is too long and too low of a reward. I think she does belong in F tier. Even but anyways, I think that's all of the non-second arc NPCs we have in Ghost World. So I think it's time to go ahead and move over to Backdoor. Anyways, next up in Backdoor, the first NPC we get to is actually Ghost Hunter Gabe 3. I don't know exactly what the numbers are in his letter, but it's Gabe, but a few of the letters are actually numbers. This questline, not too much to talk about. It's a lore questline, very similar to the introduction of Gabe, but structured a little bit differently. No good rewards. People already know how to play the game. It's going into C tier. Next up, we have Ghost Hunter Riley. The quest reward that you get from completing Ghost Hunter Riley, the hoverboard ability, is one of the most used endgame perks in Ghost Simulator. It gives you so much of a boost to your mobility, allowing you to pretty much move wherever you want to. Overall, this questline isn't too difficult for a backdoor questline. It takes about an hour to do, I think, and I think it belongs in A tier. Next up, we have Ghost Hunter Billy, which is another perk progression questline, except this one is in a little bit later level, and he gives the ability to use Particle Accelerator, which allows you to do your vacuum and disruptor speed to increase over time. Basically what this means is the longer you're vacuuming a ghost, the faster you will vacuum that ghost, which if you're vacuuming a ghost for a minute is super helpful, or actually a little bit helpful, but if you're vacuuming the ghost in instantly, it is not helpful whatsoever. Overall, his questline, he ends up going, I think, straight into F tier. Even though he gives a perk, his perk isn't super useful, and it just is too much of a pain to actually do his questline. But yeah, next up we have Ghost Hunter Rowan, which if Billy was useless, Rowan's actually quite a bit more useful. In this case, it allows you to basically use a bomb. You can hold down your button and overcharge ability, instantly disrupting and vacuuming quite a bit of the ghosts around you. And I think easily deserves to go into B tier. The reason why it's not A tier is just because of how much grinding goes on in other worlds other than Backdoor, where his perk isn't as useful. Anyways, the last quest that we have in Ghost or in Backdoor for progression, Ghost Under Blaze. Now this is a progression questline because it is required to move on to the final boss fight. Overall, this is more of a nostalgia trip than anything else for its questline. It's not, none of the quests in it are too hard, requiring you at most to grab a few items from previous areas. It is a long questline though, because it does require players to server hop quite a bit to go ahead and complete the questline. I think everything is said and done, and this belongs in B tier. Most people would probably rank this lower just because of how long the questline is. But I personally love the nostalgia trip that it does, having you go back to previous areas. Next up, we have the side questlines in Ghost Simulator, and I guess we'll just go ahead and start with Bovin, because we are going to be grabbing them all already. Very similar story to Joven. As you guys probably saw, I got these two mixed up when I was putting them up there. This NPC gives you 100 storage, requires you to complete a little bit more of an expensive crate for the quest line. And other than that, it's a very similar story to Ghost Hunter Joven. Next up, we have Ghost Hunter Alley, which is a very interesting quest line. I don't think many people actually end up doing her. She's a pretty easy quest line, except for one quest, which is really weird, because for the most part, she requires you only to have antenna level 13, I think, at the most, to complete her quest line, until the second to last quest, where she actually requires you to get up to antenna level 19 to progress, and then she jumps back down to the antenna level 13 requirement again. Very similar to how Liz is structured, but I think because of that problem with her requiring you to go all the way up to antenna level 19 to actually complete her quest, and the fact that she's so much longer than Liz, she deserves to go in here. Next up, we have Ghost Hunter Julian, which is the infinite questline in Backdoor, and I think you guys know where this NPC is going. Yeah, that's right, guys. It's going straight into S tier. Oh, wait, sorry. F tier. I misspoke. Yeah, infinite questline, bad questline, F tier. And I think with that, that is all the NPCs that we have in the Backdoor. And I think it's time to move on to, we aren't going to actually teleport over to here. We'll just cover them briefly. Go over to Bloxbite HQ and the Void. For Bloxbite HQ, there is only one quest. Actually, we don't have that quest, so let me go add it really quick, guys. But yeah, we have Ghost Hunter Bo. He's completed after unlocking a puzzle, so I'll be more of ranking him on the puzzle rather than his actual quest line, because this quest line is press a button a few times. I think it's like 37 times or something stupid. But yeah, he's pretty much going to be ranked on his puzzle, and honestly, the puzzle that he's in isn't actually... It's hard, but it isn't actually too impossible to figure out. It's probably the best puzzle in Ghost Simulator, so it will rank at a B tier, I think. It gives you a board which isn't tradable, which is a little bit worse. Yeah, I think B tier is good for him. It's not a horrible puzzle. People can actually figure it out if they spend the time. And then next up, we have all the Void quest lines. Now I know there are a lot of quest lines in the Void, but most of them are super simple. And even the dev NPCs, I like to clump just as one NPC. So all these Void quest lines are going to be grouped together. As a whole, all these quest lines give a lot of gems. Pretty much every single quest gives you a few 10,000 gems, up to like 50,000 for some of the shortest quest lines in the game. Overall, this is also the quest lines that you do need to complete to Rebirth. And it has a bow again. Overall, these are really easy quest lines. They give you a lot of gems, which is really nice for new players. They can go ahead and get a lot of gems for themselves to unbox for their first class fight or something like that. I think this is a solid A tier quest line, in my opinion. It's not the longest quest line. It is a little bit tedious to be vacuuming low health ghosts. But yeah, now that that's over, we do now have to talk about the second arc quest lines, which are going to be scattered quite a ways around. The first NPC that we have for second arc is Ghost Hunter Archie. Now this NPC isn't actually part of the second arc, since he is completed by unlocking a puzzle rather than actually getting the second arc, or getting your first rebirth. But Archie, similar to how I ranked Bo on how difficult this puzzle is, we're going to go ahead and rank this questline based on how fun his puzzle is, and also his questline, because he does actually have a questline too. Overall, in terms of his puzzle, it's actually a really annoying puzzle to do. There's a lot of mini pets scattered around, and I think new players aren't going to understand what to do with those pets. But if you click on enough of them, you end up making, for every 5 of them you click on, you'll make a random lever appear in previous areas of the main hub, which is a super obscure thing, and no new players actually understand how this puzzle works. All they can usually figure out on this puzzle is to go click 5, is that you need to go click these ghosts. They don't understand what clicking on these pets does. It's a very obscure puzzle. And then once you do manage to figure out to click on these pets, that each of these pets does unlock a lever, that each of those levers that you flick turns on a random light in the lab section of the thing. Once you've done all of that, you need to actually solve another puzzle based on the lever position of these. Now, albeit the solution to it is a binary, so super easy thing, but figuring out that you need to count the pets is both very illogical and impossible, because you're clicking on them, which makes them disappear, which means you can't count them if you've already clicked on them, and you only need to know, you can only figure out if you need to count them, and you can't figure out that you do need to count them, because there's no indication that you do need to count the pets. To figure out a binary representation of that 45 number to actually enter the code on the lights from the levers that appear randomly, that aren't connected at all. It's a horrible mess. It's a horrible puzzle. New players can't figure it out at all. The only reason people have figured it out is because it was all released as an update, and so people could see what was added in that update, and people actually knew what the game looked like beforehand. Nowadays, no one's going to be able to complete it. Questline itself is pretty mediocre too. It's very similar to Luna Blaze. I think it belongs in F tier just because of how bad the puzzle is structured. Like, I don't think I'm explaining it perfectly, but I think you guys can kind of understand why I don't like this puzzle so much. Anyways, next up we have the first actual second arc questline, which is Ghost Hunter Morgan over here in the city. Yeah, not much to talk about here. He's a second arc questline. Very mediocre, very similar to Luna and Blaze. Gives you a pet, and that's about it. Some lore. Yeah. This questline pretty much falls into B tier. It's very forgettable. Next lore questline, or next second arc questline we have is Ghost Hunter Rose over here. Yeah, very similar to Morgan. You do stuff, you get a pet, she gives you lore. Yeah, it's another. Oh, do we not have Morgan in this? That's stupid. Or Rose. Yeah. Did I put Rose somewhere else? I'm not seeing Rose anywhere. Oh, we missed David. Oh, whatever. We'll come back to him. Yeah, I'm not seeing Rose. We'll go ahead and add Rose really quick then. It's so forgettable that it got missed on this tier list. Beautiful. But yeah, there we go. We have our Ghost Hunter Rose. B tier again. It's a very basic. Second arc is a very forgettable for the first little bit. Next up, we have Ghost Hunter Ella, which very similar story, same biome as all the progression quest lines in Main Hub. Very similar structure, gives a pet. Yeah, straight into B tier. This one we actually have a picture for. And yeah, I just realized we are missing David. This is the infinite questline in Void. It does give you crate keys and boss bait instead of gems. But the quests are still super long, and there are better ways of getting those, so it can go straight into F tier. With all the other infinite quest lines. We'll go group those together so you all can see them. But yeah, there is one more quest line in Main Hub that we have to talk about, and that is going to be Ghost Hunter Hikari, which is actually a very interesting NPC. Unlike all the other second arc NPCs, this one's actually not that forgettable. She's in the volcano, just like Blaze is. Very similar quest structure. But the lore that she gives, I know I always said I wasn't doing this based on lore, but the lore she gives, and actually one of the big factors that she is actually a decent NPC, I think, is the fact that you can only do her once, so she doesn't reset when you rebirth, which is actually really nice. Her rewards are actually really cool. It's the fact that she gives some, I don't know if I'll be able to find them now, but she actually gives some kind of cool looking pets and boards. They're not like great stat wise, but they are actually pretty cool looking overall. And I'd consider this questline actually a step above where all the other second arc questlines land. But yeah, this is her quest. This is her reward. It's actually a really cool pink looking fox. I personally think that she we're missing her, aren't we? All right. I personally think she belongs in A tier, which is just slightly above. Just slightly above where all the other quest lines have gone. But yeah, I'll go ahead and now. Next up for second arc, we actually have Ghost World, which only has 2 quest lines in it. We have Ghost Hunter Riley, or Associate Riley, and Cheshire. We'll go ahead and start with Ghost Hunter, or Associate Riley, which, again, very similar to Hikari. I don't think she's quite as good as Hikari. I think her reward's a little bit lackluster, since she does give, I think she goes into B tier with the other associates, or other second arc quest lines. I'm debating on changing some of these down to C tier too, but I think she does go ahead and go into B tier. Not a horrible quest line, but not very memorable. I know some people like the motorcycle. I personally don't think the motorcycle rewards as good as like Hikari's, but yeah. The second questline that I have for second arc, I don't know if this one's actually truly second arc. I would consider it second arc, but, you know. It is another puzzle questline, where you have to go ahead and complete a puzzle to unlock the questline. And if we can go ahead and get in here, I can go ahead and show you Cheshire. This questline is one that you get by completing a puzzle, which it's actually quite a bit different than the other 2 puzzles in the game. Much similar to the Blocks Fight one, but does require you to actually go through a series of hallways to go ahead and solve the puzzle. But this puzzle is just this is what puzzles, if it's possible to get worse than F tier, this puzzle would get worse than F tier. You know what, I could actually add one. You know what, it's not even worth the effort to go ahead and add one more worse than F tier. But yeah, this puzzle, the problem with this puzzle is, one, it's kind of obscure to actually find the start of this puzzle to begin with. Like, to know to go check on the side of the castle, you're going to have to know that the puzzle already exists to actually find the starting location of this puzzle. I legitimately took 10 minutes to, before I gave up and looked at the wiki, to find where this puzzle started. On the update, it came out. Each part of this puzzle is also extremely hard to figure out. The first one requires you to go check the NPCs. There's a ASCII code behind every single NPC. You have to know that that's ASCII. You have to know what order to put that in. You have to know to use the NPCs in the first place and those numbers in the first place. You have to know that those are part of the puzzle. That's just for the first part. Once you get all that, you actually, if you can get all that, you can get through the first part. The second part, no one actually knows why in the world the lever system is what it is. The best guess we have is they're color coordinated levers, and that the color coordination doesn't matter whatsoever, and it's just binary for the amount of NPCs, which I personally don't think is true. But yeah, we have no idea why that's the case. This third part of the puzzle is also equally as bad as the first part. No one understands really, or the third part is probably the easiest part, where you need to complete a maze, and then the fourth part you have to figure out a combo for a 6 series thing, which no one's going to understand, because what you need to do is use remnant gum while looking at some 6 different square markers that are hidden around, and then using the text color as the combo, which no one's going to know to use remnant gum on those specific things to do. It's much more intuitive to just use whatever those things are put on color-wise, which isn't the correct combination. The whole thing's a mess. If it could be worse than Archie, I would put it worse than Archie, but it isn't possible to do that without admitting this table, and I don't feel like doing that. But yeah, overall, the questline itself, actually pretty decent. It requires you to collect items, which is, you either hate it or love it. I personally love it, but other people don't like it. But yeah, it's the puzzle is definitely what's weighing it down there. Next up, we have Associate Gabe, which isn't in Ghost World, but I'm not switching over backdoor for a single NPC. Yeah, this one's B tier. It's a bit lore-y. It does kind of make the connection that Gabe has a crush on Riley, but that's about it lore-wise. It is actually not that long, so it's not too bad. It gives you some boss bait and some, I don't know if it gives you crate keys, but it definitely gives you some boss bait. I think it may also give you a boss gum too, which is kind of nice. But yeah, B tier. Not much else to say. Next up, we have, wait, what? Oh, did I miss Jillian? Yeah, Jillian. NPC in, the NPC that's in, backdoor. Yeah, for pets. Yep, straight into there. This is, Ilan, he doesn't count. And yeah, next up we have all of the, NPCs from Remnant World, which are also second arc, but are more Remnant World stuff. So yeah, we'll go after Remnant Zone. Yeah, these NPCs, they don't reset when you rebirth, which is always a good thing, I think, in my opinion, is to have non-resetting NPCs. Makes them a lot easier to do. You don't have to worry about doing them again. But yeah, first up we have Alice. Now this questline, very similar to Gabe actually in its structure. It's a introductory questline, pretty short. Honestly, it's not too much to talk about it. The fact it is kind of shorter, I think, does mean it goes into A tier. It doesn't give you a perk or anything or really good pet, but the fact that it gives you lore, it's the green girl that's appearing everywhere. It's the first remnant that we really meet, since she is the remnant of Shelly. It's actually a pretty easy connection to make. Lore-wise, I think makes it a little bit higher. I know I said I wasn't going into lore in this tier list, but at this point there's not too much to talk about other than lore on these NPCs, since otherwise it looks like my camera died. Whatever. You guys don't need to see my wonderful face. But yeah, next up we have Ghost Hunter Hearts. Again, she's a second arc NPC. Yeah, not too much to talk about here. Not the worst questline in the world. I'd say she goes into a comfortable B tier. But like really, a lot of these questlines are pretty much the same thing. Why do I have 2 Ghost Hunter spades? Let's go change that really quick. Inspect. Boom. Alright. Yeah, it's a very basic questline. I think it deserves to go ahead. Actually, she might even belong lower a little bit just because she has this wonder house, which is a pain to navigate. Did I turn it off? But yeah, she belongs in I think a pretty solid B tier. Next up we have Ghost Hunter Spades. Which does actually give you a perk, which is actually one of the best things I like with permanent questlines. If a permanent questline gives you a perk, it's usually pretty nice. The only problem is this perk, as you guys can see, is not the most useful perk in the world. You're much better off using hoverboard and stuff like that to navigate. It can be good if you do reverse, so you do keep it when you reverse, so it may allow a little bit more improved movement there. But yeah, I think in general this quest, A tier. It is a permanent perk. I can't complain about another permanent perk in Ghost Simulator. And then last quest that we have in Ghost Simulator at the moment is actually going to be the newest questline, Ghost Hunter Queen. This is another second art questline. I mean, it's not... it's very similar to Hearts. She does give you a lot of lore, though, in her questline. Also, sort of alluding to another fight that we're going to have with her at some point. So I don't know exactly what that means, but she does say that at some point we will fight her. It probably has something to do with the portal and mega bosses and stuff, and that we are going to be getting at the end. But overall, not too much to talk about here. Like she probably goes into B tier. And yeah, I think that's every single questline. This is the only non-questline that I haven't ranked, since it is a void questline. So it kind of gets lumped with these. Yeah, looking at this tier list, as you guys can see, in S tier we have Adam for the hoverboard, Ghost Hunter Gran for her hotkey, and Fern for her 33 crate keys. These are, in my opinion, the best quest lines. They give you huge rewards, aren't the hardest quest lines in the world to complete, for the rewards. And yeah, and then A tier we have pretty good structure. We have quite a bit of perk quest lines. We have some shorter quest lines that are just cool. We have all of these lovely storage space quest lines. We have another perk quest line. Void quest lines would give gems, high carry, which is actually kind of decent, and then another perk quest line to finish it off. Somehow these two NPCs with their lore quest lines managed to make it into A tier. Not too surprised. Alright, I'm just trying to see if I can shift anything into C tier, because C tier is looking a little empty, but I think it's actually pretty good as it stands. Yeah, over here we have all the non-really useful perk quests, i.e. Finsley and Rowan. Pretty much every single lore quest line in the game is in here. We have Agent Blaze. Actually, Agent Blaze, interesting that he's in B tier. But yeah, a lot of the lore stuff belongs in here. Some more lore stuff's down here. Yeah. Actually, I don't know. B tier and C tier can probably be swapped around quite a bit, if I was going to make this a little bit more professional. And then F tier, puzzle, horrible quest line, horrible perk, too long of a quest line, infinite quests, pet quests. Yeah. All in all, I think this is a pretty good tier list of what to do and not do in Ghost Simulator. Anything in S tier you should probably do immediately. A tier is good quest lines to do if you're like not rebirthing and stuff. F tier is the stuff that you should really never do. Yeah, this is in my opinion the tier list of all the NPCs in Ghost Simulator. If you guys have any comments on this, like for instance you really hate Ace and you think you should go in F tier, let me know. Or if you disagree with me putting Jax all the way down here in F tier, let me know. I'd be glad to see what your guys' opinions are on some of these NPCs. I think this is a pretty good fit for the progression, at least, of Ghost Simulator. But I definitely could understand me rushing through this a little bit and not putting too much thought into some of these middle NPCs, like a lot of the lore ones, like Morgan, Rose, etc. So yeah, with that, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. It's a little bit of a different one. I know it's a little bit of a common video idea for games and not the first time. Again, a big shout out to the person who made this images and collected all that. I think Cat Wants Fishy is their tier maker username, which I think matches up with their Ghost Simulator username. I think they're one of the common, I think they're a contributor at this point in Ghost Simulator. But yeah, big thank you. I didn't have to add too many NPCs to this tier list. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will hopefully see you guys at some point in the future with the stream. I plan on doing something streamy at some point because I don't know if it'll be Ghost Simulator, but I want to do something. Yeah, bye.